The creative economy is, of course, something very dear to me, since although I live personally in the world of economics, I have a side life as a writer. These days, I'm also converting one of my books into an Amazon Prime series. So I have some dealings with the creative economy from time to time. Of course, typically when people think about the creative economy, they tend to think of this largely in terms of a silo. But in fact, creativity needs to pervade all aspects of the economy. I will make some exceptions in it. I don't want creative accounting, for example, but other than that, we need to have much greater creativity in every aspect of economic and social life. Take, for example, the way our cities look and our architecture. For some reason, even today, most of our cities seem to be stuck in socialist era brutalism. And to the extent that we have crawled away from it, it is mostly by unquestioningly copying glass and chrome architecture of the 1990s and early 2000s. We have simply not been able to develop an Indian idiom for architecture of the 21st century. I'm not saying that everything has to go back and try and copy the Taj Mahal. But there has to be some degree of creativity that goes into a lot of our architecture. The same is true in many other fields of activity. Design, for example, industrial design. Something where we basically, industrial design in India means you buy a software from somewhere, from the rest of the world, and make some inputs, and that is passed off as creativity. So we really need to think about creativity and take it a lot more seriously than we have in the past. This requires a national effort. It requires effort from, obviously, the industry itself, but it requires it from academia, those institutions that teach design, teach filmmaking, teach various creative activities. But it also needs to be a wider effort socially, an exploration of our past and our history and our traditions, an exploration of futuristic design. Indian does not mean that we are stuck, whenever I use the term Indian knowledge systems, it brings up visions that somehow we must go back to the 4th century. That's not the case. There is obviously inspiration we can take from the 4th century, but we need to move forward. We are a living civilization. It means that we need to move forward, and some of it, of course, will come from outside, but a lot of it has got to be indigenously driven, new ideas. And so this is something that we need to bring out and stop thinking of the creative economy as a silo, but it's actually the entire economy needs to be creative. Now, in this context, let me say, this may happen anyway because of the massive technological changes that are about to take off. This already is happening, by the way, in all your mobile phones that you have right here. Artificial intelligence is going to have very radical implications for creativity. Almost anybody with access to a mobile phone will be able to do, in theory anyway, able to do creative things that would have been considered till very, very recently the monopoly of somebody who had taken years of training. So in many, many creative fields, you're going to have the situation which you had, say, 100 years ago in the movie industry, when you move from the silent era to the talkies. Those who do not make the transition will simply be wiped out. Now, this is not to be taken as necessarily a bad thing, because it does mean that India in one shot can move to the cutting edge, leapfrog in a sense. As you know, India never really managed to fix its fixed line telephony. we simply jumped to mobile. Something similar is likely to happen, if we put our heads to it, in the field of creative economy. Take, for example, movie making. We are probably watching right now, in fact, as I said, I'm myself participating in converting one of my books into an Amazon Prime series, and I'm very, very conscious that if another of my books is ever converted into a movie or TV series or whatever, it will not be done in the way I'm witnessing it. In some ways, I'm witnessing history, the end of a particular cycle. The sets being built, the way the actors are doing, all of this will not be done manually in this way ever again. Now that doesn't mean that while those jobs are getting destroyed, new jobs will not get created, but those will be much more democratized. Those of you who are in this industry need to be at the cutting edge of this. Whether you like it or not, whatever you're doing today will look different. But it does mean that we could do for the creative economy what call centers did in the 90s and 2000s to corporate back offices. It could be possible, because you can do all the AI you want, but it will be possible very quickly for you to be able to create content for the world in a way it was simply not possible. You would not have known the nuances, you would not have known the instruments, the kind of imagery that would be needed for making, say, a music video for a Guatemalan audience. Nothing against Guatemala, but I'm just taking a random example. But tomorrow, you could be sitting in a basement in Kohima and editing a music video from Guatemala. So this is something that has to be understood. Artificial intelligence is a tool. Do not be scared of it. Without human control, as many of you have probably already discovered, it hallucinates, it lies, it goes off into tangents. It needs to be continuously controlled by human intervention. Those who are afraid of it will treat it as a master. But in fact, it's an excellent servant. But that requires that you are not afraid of embracing it. And the combination of your creativity and this tool and the ability now to sell this creativity into a global market is something that will define the creative economy of India. I'm not saying we will necessarily succeed in doing this. It is an opportunity. This is, of course, not only directed to the younger members of this audience, but of course, the younger members will be the biggest beneficiaries of this since they will presumably live longer. But this is here an opportunity where we could literally take our creative economy and convert it into the back office is the wrong word, but in a sense, what we did to the corporate back office, we may be able to do for the creative economy for the world. So think of it as a great opportunity. Of course, India itself is a great laboratory for the creative economy. The sheer variety, the sheer size of the population, the extraordinary diversity of our experiences, that itself provides huge amounts of inputs. And yes, we also have a massive domestic market where many of these experimentations can be done. So with that, let me stop and say that I'm glad that the Creative Economy Forum Season 3 is right here in Delhi, and hopefully many of the things I just mentioned will be discussed and internalized. Thank you very much.